Welcome to Healing Outside the Box. My name is Jean Tiberio, and I want to wish a happy Equal Pay Day to all you women out there. Today I'm going to discuss the role of inflammation on colon cancer. But first I want to apologize for going AWOL basically on these podcasting episodes. And I don't mean to make excuses necessarily, but I have been wrapping my head around writing and editing a memoir, which is finally finished. So this is a memoir, keyword there being moi, and it's called Helpers Anonymous. It's about my relationship with my caregivers years ago during the peaking of the opioid crisis. I'm putting the final touches on it now and hiring a voiceover person for the audiobook. By the way, I also have a new Google Voice number for texting for those of you who want to reach me for any reason, and I'm planning on using it as a marketing device. But if you'd like a recipe or want to hire me for nutrition counseling or want to discuss future topics for episodes, blah, 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 you can reach me at this number. Now, I am not into big launches, and I don't have an email list with thousands of addresses, but I thought I might use this texting device to offer up a free copy for a limited time before it is published and out there. So if you're interested in a free copy of my memoir, just text me at 978-712-9556 and ask for a copy to be emailed to you, along with your first name. No strings attached. Although if you'd like to review the book, I won't stop you from texting back a review. Again, my Google Voice for this texting is 978-712-9556. Thank you in advance. Now, today I'm going to discuss two seemingly unrelated studies that have come out recently regarding a risk of colon cancer. One study was done at Brigham and Women's Research Labs here in Boston, and the other at the Mount Sinai Cancer Institute in New York. In my opinion, these two seemingly unrelated studies are most likely linked. And here is why. Saturated fat and highly processed foods with fat are creating both inflammation in our gut and causing an imbalance of healthy to unhealthy gut bacteria. The growth of abnormal cells results from this inflammation, and the inflammation, again, is created by our processed American diet. I know. I'm sure you're thinking, is that all you got today, Jean? But don't go away yet, because I think it's important for us to understand this connection. We could just end it here and say, well, if inflammatory foods cause colon cancer, then anti-inflammatory foods can help stop their growth, right? Okay, but how? To better understand this, let's start with the recent Mount Sinai study and a little background. First, the background. The American Cancer Society has reported recently that the prevalence of colon cancer is rising. According to the Mount Sinai study, it is a relatively deadly form of cancer, and it's showing up at a younger age now. Here is a quote from Royce Chow at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. Quote, "This cancer is reliant on surgery for treatment, and immunotherapies that may have revolutionized the treatment of advanced cancers have only worked for a small subset of colon cancer patients. That's why there's a great need for novel target identification." End quote. In other words, the most common therapy is to cut out the colon and walk around with a poop bag, which would make no one a happy camper. Advanced targeted therapies that have worked so well with, say, ovarian cancer don't seem to work with colon cancer. As I've mentioned, you may also have heard on the news recently that the age of onset of colon cancer is getting younger, and the new recommendation is for screenings to start at age 45 rather than 50. I looked up the numbers from the American Cancer Society for 2022. The prevalence of colon cancer for men is 726,000 plus, and the prevalence for women is 710,000 plus. That's cases of colon and or rectal cancers. By the way, prevalence is slightly different than occurrence. Prevalence means the total number of living people who have ever had colon cancer. That number includes people who have been treated successfully and not necessarily currently undergoing chemotherapy or other treatments. But it is still a high number for a disease that used to be relatively rare. So, here is what researchers at Mount Sinai found out about colon cancer. It is well known that we all have a few abnormal cells growing here and there in our body that have the capacity, under certain conditions, to grow without control over their replication. Keywords there being no control over their replication. If that happens, we call that growth a new tumor. These scientists discovered that a piece of a certain specific DNA is essential for the uncontrolled growth of colon cancer. They also discovered that inflammation in the area around the tumor created an environment that allowed the genetic code to make that tumor malignant. They found this gene and labeled it. So this is colon cancer. Again, hard to treat. When they removed that piece of DNA, the rapid tumor growth slowed and was controlled. Here is another quote from the people at Mount Sinai. Quote, "The inflammation allows the cancer cells to survive in an environment they otherwise would not. Inflammatory bowel disease is a known risk for colon cancer. This finding could add to the understanding of the mechanism involved." End quote. They later go on to say, quote, "What this means for most patients with colon cancer is that inflammation that's occurring in the tumor is contributing to the tumor's growth." This stresses the importance of understanding what we can do to curb the inflammatory effects in the colon through prevention or understanding what dietary effects might have on the microenvironment in the colon. Close quote. That guy was Raymond Parsons, MD, PhD, at the Tisch Cancer Institute at Mount Sinai. He knows what he's talking about, I'm guessing, and these people are usually conservative in their statements. Here's another quote from him. Quote, "In terms of treatment, we have genetic evidence that targeting this gene actually inhibits tumors. By understanding all these different components, we will have better tools to try to prevent this disease." End quote. What's going on here is that they're targeting the growth of tumor cells by repairing genes in a new field of medicine called epigenetics. Now let's talk about the study at Brigham and Women's Hospital. This article in Science Daily cites a study from Brigham and Women's, and I'll put the link to the article in the show notes. It links the growth of colon cancer cells in our bodies to a bacteria from our gut. This gut bacteria is linked to our so-called Western diet, or more specifically to the higher amounts of saturated fat from meats, especially processed meats. So basically, what we're talking about here is that gut bacteria, or our microbiota, can either enhance or inhibit the growth of cancer cells in our colon. Highly inflammatory foods promote the growth of the bad boys of our gut bacteria community, like certain species of E. coli. These gram-negative E. coli and similar bacteria produce endotoxins in the membrane or outer shell of the cells inside of our gut. So the saturated fat in highly processed meats and convenience foods grow out E. coli, which produces endotoxins. And endotoxins, as you might have guessed, are bad for us in many ways. Not only for colon cancer, but Alzheimer's disease, cardiovascular disease, and aging of the skin. So the thinking is that these are screwing up our epigenetics in our gut, and that's creating an environment for abnormal or tumor cells to grow. The highest levels of these endotoxins that have been measured were found in meat, both red meat and white meat, but they can also be found in other processed foods with saturated fat. So what are these inflammatory foods specifically? Well, we might be able to guess this, but I'll list them anyway. Top of the list is cheese pizza. If you add pepperoni, even more so, and cheese in general. So that would be cheese steaks, double bacon cheeseburgers, etc. Another item is high-fat desserts. Not so much desserts with sugar and water, like gummy bears, but more like brownies, cakes, and similar fatty desserts. Next on the list, we have processed meats. Cold cuts, sausage, hot dogs, bacon, ribs, etc. Chicken with skin or added fat, and of course ice cream. And I am just as sorry as you about the ice cream. So you get the picture. Those are what we call inflammatory foods. And I'm not suggesting you're going to keel over if you have a dish of ice cream. This is about the cumulative effect of these foods. So now we know that inflammation can produce these endotoxins that can enhance the growth of colon cancer cells or colon cancer, but also heart attacks, strokes, Alzheimer's disease, diabetes, and even depression, believe it or not. Dr. Michael Greger has a short video on endotoxins made from saturated fat, and I'll put it in the show notes. But here we come to the rescue. We can fight this by eating anti-inflammatory foods. And what are these anti-inflammatory foods that can fight this? If I had to answer this in one word, it would be fiber. Fiber, fiber, fiber. That's actually 3 words. Okay, so the song and dance that the American Dietetic Association puts out is that the recommendation is 5 servings of fruits and vegetables every day. And as our President Joe Biden would say, it's no joke. 5 servings per day, not per week. The serving sizes that they call 1 serving are not that large, however. So you can double up on the produce that you like, and it would be 2 or 3 servings. If that sounds like a lot, remember that these are potent anti-aging foods as well. So if you're worried about the cost, fruits and vegetables are a lot cheaper than Goop or whatever is getting sold at the cosmetics counters or online now. I've mentioned this before, but in general, the deeper the color of your fruits and vegetables, the better the source of anti-inflammatory compounds. So tomatoes are high on the list. Also blueberries, strawberries, red grapes, cherries, and even watermelon. When they're out of season, you can buy the frozen organic berries and put them in your smoothies or whatever else you have. For the vegetables, in general, the darker the better, like spinach, broccoli, collard greens, romaine, green beans, but also cabbage, carrots, beans, sprouts, and sweet peppers. Add nuts, beans, and seeds to this list, and your gut bacteria will thank you. And don't forget about mushrooms if you like them. They're a great source of a lot of B vitamins. For the oils, olive oil is the best, but if you're getting a vegetable oil, I'd recommend choosing an organic or non-GMO safflower or seed oil. and this is going to sound familiar. The fatty fishes like salmon, mackerel, tuna, and sardines are high in anti-inflammatory compounds as well. So here's the bottom line. Just about everybody is recommending that you add anti-inflammatory foods to your usual repertoire. Try to cut back on the processed or inflammatory foods as much as possible. We also recommend keeping an eye on your blood sugar, making time for any type of exercise, and maybe as important as anything else in my opinion, finding a way to manage your everyday stress. I know easier said than done, but it would be worth the payoff in improved emotional well-being. Now that's all I have for you today. Remember, you can text me on my Google texting machine, 978-712-9556. And you can ask a question, get a recipe, or obtain a free copy of the PDF version of my book. Bye for now.